Welcome back. All right, so we're gonna take a look at the layout for our page, and we're not going to style everything in this round. We're just going to get all of our text into the right spot, right? So let's just do a quick review of what that means, right? We've plotted out all the boxes, right? We just did the menu, we got that and set. Now we're just going to get the rest of it in place, right? And make sure that we have all the elements that we're going to need in order to handle the photograph and the text and this red panel and then, right, the footer and the background, all that stuff. So we're just going to work on the HTML in this video. So okay, we've got a plan. Let's get started. And let's just go live. Okay. And I'm going to leave the red lines on, right? It'll be easier for us to see what I'm up to. Okay. And so the plan will be to get the red lines in this file and the content generally looking like those pink lines in our design file. Okay. So let's just take a quick back. So the first thing we got to do is we got these two paragraphs put above the headline, right? And we've got this one section here. So let's go ahead and put that together. Okay. So we've got our nav, right? And that section, right, is probably its own row. So let's go ahead. And I'm going to use a new tag called a section. Now, the section tag works very similar to a div tag or a paragraph tag, but it's just a little more semantic and helps explain the page to search engines, right, and what kind of content might be in there. So we'll use a few of these. I don't know if we'll use more, but for right now, we'll start there. Okay, so we've got that section, and what we want to do is we want to put these two paragraphs, we want to move them up into this section. Okay, so that's all great. So go ahead and save that. Right. All right. So now we've noticed that, right, you can see the two, but they still run the whole width of the page, which is not what we want. We want them side by side. So now we can reuse our row class, right, because that's where the display flex is set. Save that, and there we go. Right, now they're side by side. Okay, good deal. All right, so now this next thing, To Kill a Mockingbird, is our title. It's in the right place. My design content is a little different than this content, so I'm just gonna get rid of some stuff here. Okay, so I don't really need that. All right. So now the headline title, let's just take a look, right, is going to be in this big red field, right? And unlike all the other content that's kind of restrained in our wrapper, we want that red panel to extend beyond the wrapper, right? And we also, want our photo background to extend beyond. We'll get to that in a minute, but we're working on this To Kill a Mockingbird first, so let's take care of that. So what we're going to do is we're just going to move the end of our wrapper div. I'm going to cut it from down here and put it after our section that we just made. We'll save that. Okay. All right, let's see what's happened, right? So now, right, this red box here is now extending the full width of the browser. And our To Kill a Mockingbird title is inside of it. Okay, right? And great, that's what we wanted, right? Because we're going to make that background of this element red eventually. But now, since we've moved the closing tag of that div, that wrapper div, we've lost the containment on all the rest of the elements. So, right. So, and this is an opportunity for it to now start working with some more specific indentations, just so it's a little easier to keep track, right? And if you select multiple rows and hit the tab key, so I've got my wrapper, right? It goes to there. I'll put another one here. Move the section in, so my section and nav are in. And I've got my class, right? Okay, so there's my my H1. I'm gonna give this a div, and I'm gonna give this a new class called title overlay. I'm gonna take my H1 and put it in there, and if you remember from the design, right, I've got two. It's broken. Right, one's aligned here, one's aligned over there. So I'm going to split this. Give myself another H1. Okay. There we go. Those are stacked. Oh, I just noticed. I should retype this. Okay, there we go. Okay, so that's our second item. And, all right, so performances will give and blah. I don't think I'm going to use that. Okay, so we're getting there. Okay, so now we're going to need another. Let's take a look at the design again. Right, so very similar to what we did up here with the section. So we can go ahead. And I'm just going to copy that because it's got the right class on that we need. Save that. And this time, right, we're just gonna, so the first one, let's take the, whoops. Okay. And then I'm going to put a return, and then I'm going to paste it again. Now the second one, I don't need the title again. And I'm just going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, so I don't need 5, 6, 7, 8. And I did 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. All right, we're getting there, right? We're getting there. This is not quite right. So, right, what do we need to do here? So if we want these two to be grouped, right, we go ahead and add a div. And we move these two together in there. And, whoops. Right, if we hold Shift Tab, we can move the whole set back. Right. And remember, right, we've got our row, and that's doing the flex, but it'll only apply to the direct children, so it's going to apply to the div, which now contains the H2 and the UL, and to the UL. So we should just have 2 when we do the save. And there we go. Okay, we got our title with the UL stacked underneath. Then we've got our next set. There we go. But, right, it's running the full width. We don't want that. We want it contained. And do you remember, right? Now we can put multiple classes on an item. So on our section, we're going to add the wrapper class. And there we go, right? The wrapper restricts it to the 1080, does the margin auto, and aligns it, right? So it's all measured. So, all right, that's good. And it looks like we've got double our content because we copied it, so we don't need that. Now let's just take a look at our design. Great, right? We've got our menu, we've got our 2 paragraphs, we got our stacked H1 that extends the full width, and then we've got our 2 columns again for our dates and times. All right. Okay, so now we're on to our next section, right? So we'll concentrate just on these first 3. So we know what the plan is. We'll be working with our wrapper and our row class, and we'll get those right, and then we'll group up all of these into 3 groups. So let's have a look. Okay, so we're going to have a div, right? That we're going to put all of this stuff into. I guess do one at a time. Okay, so that covers the entire lower section. Now we could have used the section if we wanted. I'm just going to go with a div. And as I mentioned, right, we have to start to group these. So the paragraph doesn't actually need any deeper level. So for now, I'm going to just leave that on its own. So I make another div, and I'm going to put audience, sponsored by, and cost into it. I'm going to save that. I'm going to make another div. I'm going to put location, content, website. Okay, excellent. Into that, right? And I'm going to indent that. I'm going to indent that. And, right, this div is there. So I think I've got something a little out of order. I do, right? So I'm going to pay closer attention. That's better. So I'll move that. Okay, and you can see, right, if you saw me struggle there for a moment when I pasted in the wrong spot, but I was looking at, right, I can see the div, and then I see this line, and highlights, and okay, yes, that's the closing div on that. There's the opening and close, and the right stuff is in there. Open, close, right stuff is in there. So now when I save, nothing happens. Does anybody remember why nothing happens? That's right, because we did not add the classes that we're going to need. There we go. All right, it's wrapped in. Okay. Now, you may notice I'm still missing something. Not quite ready yet. So I've dealt with all of my content. So now I need to deal with the photographs. I've got all my content lined up, but I haven't handled how I'm going to do those photograph backgrounds, right? If we take a look at our design. All right. The top photograph is going to contain the menu, the first row, the overlay, and then the fourth, right? Those things. And then the next one contains everything else. So I have to make 2 more divs and treat them as groups, right? And so the first one is going to contain all the top stuff. So I'm going to start up here. And I'm going to add a new element or a new marker called an ID. Now, IDs are very similar to classes, right? The difference is that a class, like wrapper and row, is something that we intend to apply to multiple elements on a page. So whenever we need that styling, we just use that class and the styling applies. An ID is more about identifying a section or an element in the page. So you should have only one instance of an ID on each page. So you can really identify what it is you're after. So I'm going to call this one top photo section. Got my top photo. So first group is I'm going to take that top row right to the section before my title overlay, and then move that up and in. Okay. And I'm going to indent that. And I want to keep track of this stuff. All right, so I'm going to mark that div, scroll down till I find the end. I'm going to get rid of the tab. And I'm going to add, turn this into, a comment. Right, and I'm just going to call it end of top photo section. Okay. Now this comment, right, is not going to be read by the browser. It's just for me, and it's just so that, you know, when I'm scrolling through this whole document, I can keep track of like what is this closing div and why is it different than this closing div. Over here on the right, you'll see a little overlay, so you can sort of keep track of where you are in your file. As you do more and more HTML, CSS, you'll start to sort of imagine and keep this shape in your head, so you'll be able to know, oh yeah, that's the first section. This is the two lists and then the footer stuff. So, okay, so we've moved the top part in. Now we're just going to move in the title overlay. Pasted that in the wrong spot. Because okay, that's all right. So, yep, so that's all still where it should be. And then we're going to take our last section here. Okay, that's all good. All right, and now you'll see there's this new line right here, right? And this red line is going all the way up and covering our top section. Okay. So we took care of that. Okay. And now we're going to do the same thing for the bottom section, right? Because we have that background photo on it. And I'm going to give it an ID, right? And the number symbol, just like we use a period for class, we use a number symbol for IDs. And that ID is going to be lower photo section. Okay, there we go. Right, you don't have to use the image. You could type it out straight, you know, just make sure it has the equals and the, you know, the quote marks. And okay. All right. So let's figure out where our wrapper goes to. Yeah, and it's the whole thing. So we'll just, whoops. Copy that. And the same thing. I'm gonna copy this one. I'll add the end of lower photo section. Okay. Oops, looks like I duplicated it. I have it in there twice. Yep, because I copied it. I didn't delete it. So let's get rid of. Okay, all set. All right, so now we've got all our stuff roughly laid out, right? Hasn't been styled yet, and we've got some issues, right? Our lists are in line, like the menu, so we're gonna have to do some stuff here. But we've got our stuff grouped up. We have our one section going full width. Our other three sections are restrained. We've got elements where we can put the background photo. And our last item is we're just going to make a footer. And again, the footer is another semantic tag. And I don't have an image for it yet, but we'll put the New Paltz image down in there. So as we're working, we'll add that when we get there. All right. Okay. That's it for this section, right? So we've got all of our stuff in place, and let's just see. I think I'm just going to add some indents. All right. So this one looks okay. All right. We close there. And we have, I'm just going to indent everything once, right? I'm doing that so that the body is my outermost element, and then my IDs, and then everything else has worked its way in. Right. So try and keep after your indents. It'll just make your navigate code going through your items a little easier, right? When this stuff gets all kind of out of whack, it's really hard to keep track of, what's inside of what, right? Is my nav really inside my wrapper? Right, you should be able to see it on your display, but just be aware. So I'm going to go ahead and make that final save. All right. Okay, we're in good shape. Our next step will be to start styling up this and making it look like our design.